You're listening to Just Another Solar podcast, bringing you the latest from the solar industry. This episode is proudly sponsored by Catch Power. Are you still wasting time on site trying to make complex systems work? Struggling with export limits, max demand thresholds, EV control, or multi-brand headaches? Catch Control is your answer. A 2-pole wide Aussie-made energy meter that does the thinking for you. Export limiting, load control, battery and EV integration, DNSP compliance, all sorted. For more information, please visit our website, catchpower.com.au.
All right, welcome back to Just Another Solar podcast with Luke Beattie. That's me. Karl Jensen isn't here. He may appear. We have no idea where he is, but g'day, Karl. And we also have Jess MacPherson. G'day, Jess.
Hey, mate. How's it going? The solar coast is flying pretty high right now.
Absolutely. And we're recording this on the 20th of June, so we're getting really close to the 1st of July, and it just feels ominous, I would say.
Definitely. You can feel the storm front coming in, can't you?
And industry legend Nigel Morris. How are you doing, Nige?
I'm good, thanks, team. Jumped on the bike to go into the city yesterday. It was 1.9 degrees when I left, which made for a pretty bloody cold ride. And I think I picked up a lurgy from the grandkids. Thanks, Charlotte. That was awesome. Great visit. But, nothing like a 1-year-old covered in snot climbing all over you, giving you big kisses. She was like a koala, which was lovely. But, just what you need on the solar coaster. I've got my sick bag at the ready.
There's a bit of that going around, though. You tend to have, it comes from the kids, and then it goes to the parents, and the parents go to the solar businesses, and then the whole business gets infected. So
that's right. Just
in time for the battery bonanza.
That's right. And, of course, the solstice is only days away, right? The solstice is right on us. So it's that time of year. The daylight hours are as short as they can be. It's we're turning the corner. It seems like we're turning the corner on everything. Batteries are about to go explosive, and, the sunshine hours will get longer, and we'll all be happy.
Winter solstice is tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
21st.
Oof.
Yeah, well, in a few days ago when people are listening to this, timing is, yeah.
And I've noticed that there's been a bit of chatter online around availability of battery stock already. I've heard that some of the leading batteries are already backed out to November, December. Others are more readily available. So probably a really good reminder to get forecasts in, to get POs in, and as much as you can manage, get stock on the shelf, because it's going to get turbulent from here.
Yeah, I heard the same thing, actually. I heard exactly the same thing, is that a couple of the big brands are pretty much booked out now for the next sort of few months. So it's going to be very interesting, because that opens the window opens the opportunity for those other suppliers who we may not know so well, who have stock.
So maybe it's all those fringe players that you go to a trade show, you've never heard of them, you see them on a trestle table in the back blocks. Yeah. Maybe it's their time to shine.
Yeah, maybe.
As long as we're not sacrificing quality for availability, because, you don't want to be going back to them in a year's time because they've never really worked. We won't leave you with many happy customers that way.
I can't imagine that happening, Jess. I saw a quality quote this morning, actually. There was a quote online that was, 30 kilowatts of solar, 40 kilowatts of batteries, 3-phase upgrade from single phase to 3-phase, and the whole package was like 25 grand.
What? That's nuts.
So, and in fact, we don't have to mention any brand names. As you know, I've been on the road a lot, and was visiting someone the other day, and I said, are you on the S train? Are you doing that S battery? And he went, well...
You shall not be named.
Are you on the S train? He said, well, to be honest, a customer came in and they said, I want one of those S batteries. And to be honest, they said, I've got a quote from someone else. I'll show it to you. And he looked at it and he did some numbers and he went, mate, that is below cost. So he doesn't want to get on the S train anymore, because he said, the competition is already just below cost in some cases. And we're hearing story after story of people just doing the most ridiculous things in this. It's like someone pulled the frickin' lever on the solar coaster, and people had just got their arms flying, and they're just
particularly New South Wales
batteries.
There's been a lot of. It seems like some of the people in the New South Wales industry have been looking to tar and feather the Smart Energy Council, Chris Bowen, the New South Wales government, and all of this comes down to the fact that New South Wales government have announced that the PDRS, so the battery scheme that they've been operating, isn't stackable with the cheaper home batteries program. Now,
Correct.
to understand this correctly, Chris Bowen said that it would be stackable with state programs, and that's his remit as the federal energy minister. But then it's really the prerogative of the states to determine if they want to stack their schemes or not. So New South Wales said, no, we won't do it. From the 1st of July, they've increased the incentive to be part of a VPP from $800 to $1,500. But there's a lot of upset people out there in the industry who seem to have sold stacked schemes to their customers before the scheme details were actually clear.
I think it's really unfortunate because there's obviously a lot of people hurting and maybe hurt people are lashing out, but, because it's a big toll on your business, and New South Wales has really been through it already, as we know, with how long it even took for the scheme to come in that's there. But I think, really making sure we know who's at fault. Like the Smart Energy Council's really been our biggest advocate. It's been very clear that, we've got to be realistic about what they can do and how much the government can listen to them. And I don't know, I think that how long it was quiet for was pretty telling that it wasn't going to be good news. I think they would have been a lot quicker to tell us what was going on if they had something that people wanted to hear.
And, of course, listeners of Just Another Solar Podcast would have heard us giving warnings to this effect over the past couple of episodes. And Wayne Smith was pretty clear that it wasn't a done deal when we interviewed him on the last episode. So, maybe some of those complainers should tune in. I will say, though, that although it's aggravating and annoying and highly disruptive, and, of course, much more so for someone who owns a retail business than my personal situation. So I have a lot of empathy and sympathy. I did listen to an interview with Penny Sharp, New South Wales Minister for Energy, about the issues that she's facing, though, and I do have some empathy for the fact that by switching the incentive to a VPP, what they've done is, rather than making batteries just super cheap, what they've done is switched the emphasis to how do we solve our state energy conundrum? How do we get that energy available when it's needed most? How do we get it into programs that are going to potentially reward customers even more? Now, it's not going to work for everyone, and VPPs are a bit confusing at the best of times, but I thought it was a really interesting maneuver on her part that showed a bit of macro vision. So, the proof will be in the pudding. Yeah, let's see how it goes.
So, Nigel, that's a perfect segue. So coming across to the WA scheme, we've had the scheme details published, but there's the supported solutions list. So that means the inverter and battery solutions. No, they haven't. So they've announced the list. They've said that there's approximately 10 solutions that will comply.
What a tease.
You've got 11 days, mate.
So the industry over here has also got a lot of questions around, retrofits to modular systems, about what they can and can't install from the 1st of July. And it has mandatory VPP. So I sat down with the Energy Minister here, Amber-Jade Sanderson, to discuss the WA scheme and specifically around VPP mandatory requirements. So let's have a listen to that one. Thanks for joining me, Minister. It's great to have you on board.
Oh, thanks for having me, Luke.
The federal battery rebate, the cheaper home batteries program, said that the batteries or solutions needed to be VPP enabled. But the WA scheme has come out, but it's actually mandatory under the WA battery scheme. What drove that decision?
Well, this is an important principle as part of the rebate. It is a significant rebate and a taxpayer-funded rebate. And with any of these things, I think it's important that we are able to do something for the greater good or the broader energy system. And in this instance, it's essentially enabling the system to access the battery from time to time to provide stability across the system. On those days or those peak times where we need it. Many of your listeners will be far more technically competent than I, so I'm not going to attempt to go into the technicality of it. It's really around the principles of a very large scheme, a $375 million scheme across Western Australia that will support increased battery uptake across households, but also importantly support the synchronisation of the system and to provide stability of that system. So we have lent into this part of it a little further than the federal scheme, but I think that is going to be a really important part of the system going forward.
Definitely. And I'll note that the rates that they're paying the VPP are very generous in comparison to anything else around the country. It looks like consumers are also going to get a win in households.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's a few aspects to it. And one is that there's a no worse off guarantee. That Synergy and Horizon will enter into agreements with households. It's around 70 cents per kilowatt hour of that energy that is drawn from the battery. There's notice given to the household that their battery is about to be accessed. They're compensated for that, and they're given energy credits on their bill for any of that energy that they're using off the grid. So you won't be certainly worse off by having it. In fact, you'll probably be a few $100s better off by the end of the year.
Now, we've also seen different programs come and go to support solar and batteries over the years. How confident can the industry be that this one's going to go smoothly, first of all, and also stick around?
Yeah, look, really good question. And just to provide a bit of context for your listeners, well, the Cook government made an announcement during the election campaign for our battery rebate scheme, which would have provided rebates of $5,000 in the Swiss and $7,500 for Horizon customers for a rebate and access to a no-interest loan scheme. This was a really important part of the policy to provide up to $10,000 of no-interest loans to households of $210,000 and under. And that's going to provide access to families and households that have never had access before to this kind of technology. Shortly after that, the Commonwealth, so that would have been 20,000 batteries. That's what the envelope was for. Shortly after that, the Commonwealth announced a very generous scheme across the entire country, $2.7 billion, I think it is, for rebates of about $3,600. We have been working with the Commonwealth since that time to make sure that the schemes align and complement each other. And, we had a choice. We had a choice as to whether we could allow people to stack the rebates. So 20,000 people could get rebates of almost $9,000. And then the rest of the 80,000 people would have rebates of $3,600. I was of the view, and generally I think the sector was of the view, that that would overheat the market and the sector with that immediate demand and chase for the big rebate. And it would also be incredibly unfair. And you'd just have a small number of people get a lot of rebate and everyone else gets a little bit of rebate. So we worked with the federal government to ensure that we could smooth our $384 million commitment across their 100,000 batteries. So ultimately, people will still get $5,000, but it's going to essentially set the sector up for years to come and avoid that mad rush at the beginning of the scheme, which is what we've seen has overheated markets previously. It's also a highly regulated area, as you and your listeners know. This is one of the most regulated areas of any business. There's state-based regulations through building and energy. There are 2 federal regulators. We will be increasing compliance and increasing the capacity for licensing and regulation. There's an accreditation requirement for installers. Battery products need to be registered with Synergy and Horizon.
We're already one of the most regulated industries going on there. So
that's
the
right.
solar installers and companies who listen to this, knowing that it's a very technical product, it's important that we get it safe. Coming back to the market, though, speaking on behalf of industry, we don't want to see zero-cost batteries going out. We don't see any benefit to industry and to households and to anyone for that to happen. So maybe that's another motivation and part of the conversations you had with Minister Bowen.
Yeah, and I think smoothing out the pipeline of work, but not crunching the demand early up, and disincentivizing some companies from just ratcheting up prices as well to keep pace with the rebate. And we've seen that happen in other sectors. So we want this to be a long-lasting program that many, many households can access, 100,000 in Western Australia. And importantly, our no-interest loan scheme will be accessible for every one of those households, not just those who would access the state scheme.
And that's being managed by Plenty. So there's some information sessions coming up. For those of you listening who need more information on it, there's plenty of online and in-person information sessions coming up. So you can jump on and check them out. And lastly, Minister, if you have one message for the solar and battery industry here in WA, what's the key thing you'll want them to hear today?
Well, I guess the first thing is that, consumer protections are front and centre of the implementation and the rollout. We want to support and back in WA companies. You have to have a WA address. And we want good, reputable, mainstream companies to have work for years and years to come.
So there you go. Really good to have a chat with the Minister. And it's not so much a deep dive technically, but just to get a macro idea of where the WA government's reasoning was for the mandatory VPP, and obviously aligns there with the New South Wales Minister, Penny Sharp's thoughts on that as well, Nigel.
It's pretty interesting, isn't it? Because, we've got all these states. I'd hate to be a national solar operator. Good grief. There is a literal shit sandwich of incentives, penalties, perverse and contradictory policies across the country that make this so complicated for people. CSIP, I see, is now part of the WA scheme from July 1 as well. There's a requirement to be signed up for CSIP, which is a good thing, but, oh my goodness, there's a lot going on.
It's a whole lot to happen at once. And our guest today is pretty much an expert in these matters, so it'll be really good to deep dive. But before we do, we've got a bit of a news flash. I feel like we're going a bit Daily Mail here, but why not? We've got Chris Williams versus Natural Solar in the federal court. Bit of a soap opera in this one. So he was the founder and CEO of Natural Solar. They were bought out by 1,5 as part of their massive acquisition.
Along with Solar Ray and Arcana Energy, right? So three of them. And another one in SA.
Chris Williams was dismissed for quote unquote serious misconduct. And then he's now suing them, saying it's unfair. And it was coming up towards an earn-out period where he would have got a payment. Chris Williams said that, he was a whistleblower and the judge didn't necessarily see it that way, but it was a fiery clash of egos, share deals, solar profits, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that one unfolds.
It sure is. I stumbled across that document last week when I was chatting with someone, and my goodness, it's very revealing. It's actually it's really worth anyone in the industry who's kind of interested in mergers and acquisitions and looking at the machinations of what works well and what can go off the rails. It's worth a read of that federal court document because it is quite revealing. I have a feeling we haven't seen the last of those federal court records, that this is going to drag on for a couple of years.
And some really colourful commentary on the Solar Cutters page, if you remember there. Check it out.
Get the popcorn out.
That's right. The other one I'm going to bring up, because no one's talking about it, in 11 days' time in New South Wales, the sun tax becomes mandatory, at least in one network area, which is Ausgrid. And off-air, Jess was telling me that the sun tax, technically known as two-way pricing, is also coming to South Australia, Jess. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So SA Power Networks have announced, I believe it's a trial at this stage, but the summary is it's, I think the way you put it earlier was great, like a bit more carrot, a bit less stick. It will still be a tariff in the middle of the day after, I think it's 9 kilowatt hours of export. And then for some of the power you send in the afternoons, you'll get quite a bit more for it. It could be a bit lucrative, but I think there's a bit lucrative for people who, are able to export a bit more in the afternoons, for example. But I think most especially having really clever kit that's able to send power when you want it to and not send power when you don't want it to is going to be quite crucial. I wonder who has a piece
Who's
of
got
equipment
it?
like that.
Nigel eyes light
That's
up.
crazy.
Is it time for another shameless plug?
So that you can catch your power or something, I don't know. But there's a few native solutions as well, I guess I would say. And then all of this to say that it's going to come down to how the retailers actually deal with this.
That's right.
Is this going to be passed along to a customer, and how much?
Right.
Hopefully they can they can compete with each other enough to not put people
and hopefully not too much complexity. And this is what we're seeing in WA. I've chatted to some retailers since the scheme details are announced, and that they have to be registered with Plenty specifically for the scheme. Plenty goes through their financials and they have to tick all these boxes, and then they have to go through a whole admin piece just to get their customers pre-approved for it. I've had companies say to me in the last week that this is too bloody hard. We're just going to go with the Fed scheme and not the WA scheme, because for the sake of $1,300, it's going to cost us more than that
Well, it's back to the shit sandwich issue, right? Because, here in New South Wales, as an energy consumer, you've got, prices have just been announced to go up. I didn't even want to open my electricity bill today. I saw a notice from Origin and just went, oh my God, I don't even want to know how much they're putting it up. But I did see an article from Giles Parkinson where he talked about his power bill being increased dramatically. The shoulder was up, off-peak was up, peak was up, standing charges at $2.66 per day, right? $2.66. So you've got all this stuff going on with energy pricing. At the same time, being a solar owner, of course, I think he's got batteries. He used to have batteries, but I think he's got batteries. He's now got the ability to try and do some offsetting of that. At the same time, if he doesn't catch it all at the right time of day and get it under control, he's going to be slugged with an export tax from tomorrow. So it's just, it is so...
It's an uphill battle, isn't it?
Oh my goodness, it is so... I don't know how a consumer could even get their head around or a solar retailer for that matter, which one of these tariff structures do I put a customer on? Which one of the rebates do I go for? Which one of these, how do I want to control this to get the most out of it for the customer? It is so complicated.
I think you make a really good point there, Nige, in terms of how much responsibility should a retailer, like a solar installer, have over advising people around what retailer they should be with? Because it's so personal. It's so based on when they, their lifestyle. To do a nice little segue, Bobby McKibben did a really interesting comment on some of the new regulations that might be required, which we'll talk a bit more about in a second. But just in terms of, how much responsibility a retailer should have over that. Because, you installed the solar for them and you want to set them up for success to get the most out of it. But the retailer is completely out of your control as a business. And how that plan might change and things like that.
It's so true. And the only thing we can guarantee in 6 months, it'll be different.
Going up.
It'll be different, right? Yeah. Some new deal will come out. Someone will get in there and have another crack at it, or they'll introduce something different, or someone will get whacked. We've already had the Prime Minister and the Energy Minister say, we're going to whack the retailers and get them to stop jacking prices up unnecessarily. Ironically, Giles's piece about the massive increases he had were from a government-owned retailer. So the government's got a bit to answer for there, but never boring.
Coming back to your tick boxes, Nige, they need to be solar experts. They need to be legal experts. They need to be IT experts. And now they need to be financial experts.
Ain't it true? Ain't it true? Speaking of which, that's probably a good segue. We've got a guest here today joining us who has a bit of a view on all this kind of stuff because it's right in the territory of NRN and Alan Hunter. Alan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Nigel, hey everyone. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome, mate. So as we always do, we like to start off by getting a little bit of a backstory. For those of you who haven't met Alan, we're sitting in a bar somewhere, Alan. They go, oh, g'day, what's your name? What do you do? How did you end up in solar, Alan?
Long story. I joined solar about 5.5 years ago, originally from the car leasing business and jumped over to a whole new industry. Back to what Luke just said there, I had to become an expert or understand about all those elements and including energy as well. But I had a lot to learn through over the past 5.5 years to kind of understand this complex space. And when I joined into the solar industry, one thing that I really wanted to change was the equality, the helping everyone have equal access to renewable energy was one of my missions. I understood that those who could afford it, generally homeowners who could put on their mortgage or had some means, they could buy solar and now buying battery. But for me, I wanted to really help the other side of the market who potentially might not have the means to do this, or renting a home or in social homes. And kind of stemmed out and started to build this business model.
So you've built a business. I've met quite a lot of you. You've got a cracking team, I have to say. You've got some great people in there and built up a nice little business. Who is NRN and what is NRN?
The whole aim is that we want everyone to have equal access to renewable energy. Now, how do you do that? How do you change a status quo from expecting mums and dads to spend tens of thousands of dollars to make the right transition and decrease their bill, to try and basically say, you don't need to spend all this money, it's just going to happen for you. I'm going to relate it to another Another industry being the telecommunication industry. The big boom happened in that space when phone plans included a phone, right? So our whole vision as we building out this business was, how do we create energy plans that just include solar and battery as part of your plan? So that's really what the fundamental is of the business. But like, who are we? Like, we're a platform that will basically sit between the solar industry and the energy industry. So I'll start with the energy industry. We work with the energy retailers to build these energy plans. There's a lot of benefits for them doing this, and we can talk a bit about that. Once those plans are built, we then move to the solar industry and we say, hey, like, we've got this solution where you could tap on the shoulders of a market that you might not have been able to convert before or even speak to, because it might have been unviable for that consumer base. And can proudly say, after 5.5 years building this business, we have energy plans in Australia that now include solar and battery for consumers, and it costs them absolutely nothing to get it. There's no financing that sits behind it, and it's just purely an asset that sits on your house, and you can reap the benefits from it without having the liability behind you.
So it's a solar and battery offer. No cash up front. Nice timing, by the way. Good timing. Well done with the battery offer just rolling into the market. That's presumably been good, but also thrown us something of a curveball with you. We've seen other no upfront cost solar deals touted around the market for ages. What makes this different to other no upfront cost solar deals?
I think the learning of the solar industry, we have 25 gigawatts of unmanaged generation, I label it, rooftop solar that's just pumping into the grid. And it has caused a lot of challenges within the energy sector. Those other solutions where it's no cost or people buying it, like, they're great because it's always about the consumer and being all about the consumer buying an asset or having access to an asset for themselves. Where we're trying to change is we are providing an asset on the home for the benefit of the energy sector. So it's, we aggregate these assets into a large virtual power plant. We do lots of clever stuff for it. The aim of the game here is that if we can help a retailer balance their hedge position, reduce their exposure within the market, they're going to be able to provide cheaper plans to the consumer. So where is this different? This is not a power purchase agreement, a PPA that is just a rate to a customer. We're not really dealing with the customer here. We're dealing with the energy retailer. But the energy retailer will be retailing the energy that will come from the solar and battery system and the grid. And that cost of the power is actually the same price. It's just significantly cheaper.
So what's the term for a customer? Sorry, Alan. They sign up for the program. What's a typical term of the contract?
So a consumer will sign an agreement with us for 12 years for us to go and manage and look after that asset for that period. What does that mean? Now, 12 years sounds a bit scary. I'm signing into something for 12 years. It means for the next 12 years that you're going to have access to cheaper energy plans that you would not be able to access otherwise. And for the next 12 years, you have someone monitoring and looking after that system that's on your home. That said, you can buy out the system at any point in time. And we basically pass through the depreciation benefits to the consumer. So if they were to buy it year 6, halfway through, the value of that their system would be half the price than it was from day one. So they can still capture those benefits throughout, but overall it's a 12-year agreement. And
you call it like a rent to buy scheme if you were trying to put it in like colloquial terms, or no?
Not really. I guess we and this is my view is challenging ownership. Why do I need to own the panel that's on my roof in the future? What does that give me as a consumer? Yes, sure, it will free electricity as we would claim it. Obviously, there's a cost to doing that. But the consumer can own it at any point if they want to. At the end of the term, they can keep it, but they can. The whole idea is that we would go back and replace the battery or replace the assets there, and they'd go again. We're really, again, challenging the fact of, do consumers need to own these assets that are on their home? Another asset that's on your home is your smart meter. Do you need to own your smart meter? If someone would come to your doorstep to say, hey, I'm going to install a meter for $600 on the side of your wall, and it's going to give you every day how much energy you used, is that something that's going to add value to you? Probably not, but that is the reality, is that's bundled into your energy plan, and that's what you're paying for.
I think it's an interesting perspective. So I guess to Nigel's point as well around, like, when it sounds too good to be true, the sort of the hairs kind of raise a bit on your arms a little in this
like when you see cricketers on the TV ad. I
get 100%. So how do you guys make your cut? Like, how are you keeping food on the table?
We are a typical software platform, right? We sit in the middle of an investor who gives us capital to deploy systems. We sit in the middle of the energy retailer to create the plan and a solar retailer who sells and installs the solution. We take a clip of the entire transaction. So when money comes into us to deploy, we're taking a clip of that. When we deploy an asset, we're taking a clip of that. And when every month we charge the energy retailer to license the assets in someone's home, we'll be taking a clip of that. So it's a pure platform play as the business model. I get asked a lot the question, well, who's losing? Like someone's going to be losing here. Who is it? And I think that's Nigel's question to me actually. And look, I think there's two ways I look at it. The main two losers here are coal-fired power stations, which is great. I'm happy for that. And then the networks. Now, networks is an interesting one because they could be winning at the same time because like a virtual power plant in the world of networks could help them reduce their future capex and essentially reduce their exposure to brownouts and blackouts. So I think there's a benefit, but losing because we're avoiding network charges. On the other side, we are reducing the risk profile for a retailer. Now, very soon, we're going to see energy bills go up by 10%. You know, we're all talking about it. But the reality of the cost of power has not gone up in the market. It's just very volatile. We moved to a 5-minute energy market. We have a spread of $17,000 per megawatt hour in a market over 5 minutes. That's the most volatile market in the world that we're dealing with in energy. So your cost of risk is increasing. Where we see virtual power plants and our solution play well for an energy retailer is managing that risk. And how you can manage a risk is a virtual power plant. And that's why we're starting to see the benefits flow through to consumers.
This is interesting to me because in a past life, going back a decade or so, I had a PPA portfolio and ran a number of PPA portfolios. And the difference there was effectively it was just, you know, finance dressed up as energy price per kilowatt hour that was passed on to the customer, where I bundled the whole lot up. But this sounds quite different. There are two things that strike me. Number one, the biggest complaint we had from PPA customers was, I'm going to get a bill from the energy retailer and I'm going to get a bill from you. That makes no sense. Now I've got two bills. Surely that's ludicrous, right? And it was just confusing as heck for energy customers. And although some kind of like the idea of pay as you go solar, there were hairs on it. So you've kind of solved that problem, if I'm not mistaken, because with a tie-up with energy retailers and passing the benefit back to them in terms of, you know, hedging their risk, but then also passing benefits to customers. Am I right that you've solved that issue of two bills?
Yeah, absolutely. When we started this business, we did PPAs too. We did about 30 PPAs, I remember. And that was the biggest feedback from market was, I don't like the two bills. So that was one problem. And then the financier problem of, you know, asking your financier that you could pay less interest during the winter months and more interest in summer months just doesn't work. You know, they want their constant cash flow. Not that we did ask that question, but I think for us, it was to build a business model that for the consumer, it was simple. There was no complexity of going, so if I use power from my solar, it's 18 cents a kilowatt hour, and from the grid, it's 30 cents a kilowatt. It's complicated. Let's just keep things simple. And I proudly say that we've achieved that now, and it is very simple for a consumer.
I mean, the other part of this, though, that is complicated, right, is you've got to deal with metering, you've got to deal with procurement, you've got to deal with solar retailers who are in there somewhere who are going to want to install and have probably got an obligation to maintain. There's all these moving parts that need to be put together in the background to pull a deal like this together and avoid that shit sandwich of complexity that we've been talking about all episode. How have you dealt with that?
Trial and error through the whole process. We went through the journey of doing, well, do we do it all ourselves? Do we, we'll bring money in ourselves, we'll become an energy retailer, we'll do the EPC, we'll sell it direct to consumer. And there was, as the business evolved, we learned that, no, this is a partnership model. The way that we can achieve that is by partnering with the two industries, having a solution there for investors to deploy money in renewable. It's a very, popular alternative asset class in the investment space at the moment. And I guess it's all come together, but the way that we can scale it is through technology. And our team, we've got our internal developers here, and the team's been amazing building this for scale. And that's what we're setting up to do at the moment.
So you're like the grinder of the solar industry, right? Just the matchmaker in the middle, kind of connecting like-minded, well, it may be Karl's friends.
I don't know
Karl's
which dating app you use, Nigel.
Yeah, I don't know why you picked Grindr as your example.
Well, Karl just suddenly popped in.
Karl's just popped in. G'day, Karl.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Apologies from sunny Adelaide.
Welcome to the show, Karl.
Welcome to the show.
We're deep in with Alan from NRN.
So, Alan, I'd like to ask then, it seems that NRN would be carrying the O&M, so basically the operation of the system, over the course of the agreement. So the consumers get the benefits, but it would be critical that you guys are carrying the risks for the reliability of the gear and the quality of the gear. So what sort of criteria do you use for the gear that you're installing on the roof?
Awesome question. It's exactly that. We view this, we're all in together. If that system is not performing on site, we don't get paid. We don't get paid, our funders are upset. This whole thing, doesn't go too well. So there's a lot of, let's go like ESG compliance pieces that we go through vetting certain providers. There's the warranties aspect of it. It is about trying to choose the right bets of which solar panels or which battery and inverter companies you are using. I say we haven't gone very wide. We've kept it very narrow so far in what we're doing. We'll test a few, a few hundred. We'll understand how that goes, and then we'll keep advancing. But we take that risk right now. So we, as an example, our warranty terms we have with our OEMs is specific for our business. We monitor those assets. We have our own asset management platform that sits in the back end, and we make sure that these systems are performing in certain ways. And I do see this, hopefully, when we do reach our scale now, is helping OEMs come into the market. Like, show us, why would your solution be suitable for a program like this? Because in a way, we're looking at every single residential site that's installed to make sure it's performing. I could say there could be some OEMs out there globally that kind of take that risk factor of going, it's going to be installed. No one's really monitoring it or looking at it. We can get away with a few things. Like, we're looking at our degradation curves on every single battery on an annual basis to make sure it meets within the warranty terms in place. So those are kind of things that we're putting into place because we're on the hook for it otherwise.
It's where it gets really interesting, actually, I'm thinking back to the days when I was running a PPA portfolio, and some of the retailer and installer partners that we were working in really got quite excited about this because they went, hang on, this is a whole lot of workload that you're taking off me. I don't necessarily have to take those calls, and I don't have to monitor the performance of this system, and I don't have to do something
I don't
to
have
maintain.
to sell against 6 other quotes to an individual customer.
Yeah, right.
Let convince this one guy that what we've got is good.
let alone the front end. And I want to come back to the front end because that's a really good point you make, Jess. But it seems to me that there's a really interesting play here for solar companies, and we hear a lot about the burden of O&M. We had Omnidian on some episodes back where we talked about that burden of OEM, and when you really look at it and you scale up and you're really doing volume like you're all going to be doing with batteries, there's 1 million batteries you're going to have, that's a hell of a fleet out there to O&M and to monitor. Yes. And so am I right that you're taking a bit of burden off the retail installers by doing that?
Absolutely. And I think, the role what we won't play is we're not out on the field going to sites seeing them. We're playing the role of, we've identified a site is down, we diagnose it behind the scenes, and then we take our appropriate steps to make sure that site is up and running. We are an AI first led business, so everything we do is about how do we automate this? It's all logic when it comes down to these parts. So we already have our AI agents, let's just say, checks all of our sites daily and tells the human, hey, I think you should have a look at this site, there's an issue. And then we have a human right now diagnosing it. We'll get to the point where we're diagnosing that just through logic and using AI to do that. So that is the role that we'll play, but we won't play the role going into site. But what we are providing is, to all of our partners, is the ability to have this ongoing potential management fee or ability to earn that servicing money by going to site and rectifying if there is an issue required.
This might feel a bit left of field potentially, but how do you go about if customers aren't great in terms of the end user, the sort of person living in the house doesn't have a stable Wi-Fi connection, or especially if you're doing work with social housing, if people are moving in and out often and the Wi-Fi details are changing frequently, or they just don't want to afford to pay for constant good internet connection. I don't know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I understand. We do not use customer Wi-Fi, foundation number one. We do install we call it NRN Link. It's a box that sits on the customer wall because we have to install a sub-meter to measure the output from the battery for the energy retailer. And in there, we have our own 4G modem. We have 2 SIM cards. We have Optus and Telstra. So as a backup within it, I can say that we have 100% connectivity to our sites. And we went through the painful learnings of relying on customer Wi-Fi. And very early on in the journey, we moved away from that. And look, rightly so. Once we've installed, they're just enjoying cheaper electricity. They're not very engaged. They don't need to be engaged. They're not looking at their apps every day. Some will, but probably less because they haven't actually put an investment into this. They just want to know that they're going to be saving money on their energy plan.
And their self-consumption isn't so influential. Yeah,
it's a really interesting thing. So because it's the same cost of energy from your solar and battery and the grid, this is where the virtual power plant comes into it, and it's quite. Well, I feel like it's quite smart from what I've learned this and last year was that energy retailers are turning off solar systems to curtail them during the daytime. They are dispatching the battery whenever they want. They have full autonomy or freedom to how they manage that virtual power plant without conflicting the interest of the consumer. I've seen so many stories. There's an article not long ago in the ABC about AGL dispatching someone else's battery. And there was this argument around, well, by me joining a VPP, an energy retailer is going to control my asset. And I don't think I'm being very well compensated for it. Whereas I guess in our world, they do whatever they want because the customer is not conflicted in that decision to how they should manage that asset.
It's a total mindset change, isn't it? It's really, it's taken me a little while to get my head around this, but I really like it. And the other thing that strikes me is if you're structuring this up and kind of bundling in, you've actually got kind of 2 primary or 3 primary parts. There's the customer, but they're kind of way down the chain. But it's really the installer who's putting the gear in, and then there's the energy retailer with the customer in the middle. And so you've got access to all the energy retailer performance and their retail rates. And so where do you sit in the whole contestability space, because contestability is a big issue. Where does that land in your world?
That's why we see ourselves as a future marketplace for the energy retailers, which will naturally drive prices down. Like that's what the marketplace is set to do. They want more acquisition, it will drive prices down. But we have visibility on how much a retailer can earn from these customers. We see it every day. We know their margin on those consumers. We know how much a solar retailer is earning on every sale. So a solar installer that is selling our solution to market has a fixed price. They're not sitting in front of Sue and John negotiating because they pulled out another quote from another solar retailer and they're eating into their margin. So they've got good margins. We make sure of that, and it's non-negotiable. It's in place. We know how much a customer's saving, and we know how much an investor is making. So there's these 4 stakeholders, and you can put one up and one goes down and so forth, and we've got to make sure they're really well balanced. And then you go and chuck a battery rebate on top of it. That was what do we do with this thing? And
have you bought a yacht in the Bahamas yet? Just put your order in now because there's about a penny weight for those super yachts.
It was nuts. We actually came to the point of going, well, we're actually going to give a customer $2,000 up front in cash when they do join and get a new system on their home, and saving around $800 to $1,000 a year on their electricity bill, because we've got this extra surplus of capital. We want to make sure it's balanced, and that's I don't think we've got it perfect yet, but I think we're going to learn over years to come.
Alan, elephant in the room. What's the transferability of the original agreement? So let's say that Mrs. Jones signs on with you, and then she sells a house 5 years down the track.
Good question. So we in the early days we did allow transfers to happen. It got really messy because then you're trying to get the person that's in the home to try and sell this product to the new incoming. Fundamentally, the asset is sold with the home. We also have a security within the assets that are on the property. We get notified at a point of sale, so we get contacted by a solicitor, and the assets are sold behind the scenes. So there is never a dollar that's paid from the customer to us. We actually transfer the sale of the asset at the point of sale of the home being sold. I know there's a big program with Sol Griffith a year and a half or so ago around this, a hex for solar. It's very similar. Like you can. I'm saying, you're getting a solar and battery, you'll save $1,000 a year on your bill, and when you're going to sell your home, it should add value to your property, and you're taking the benefits of the depreciation of the asset over time as well.
And it's amortized, so it's that whatever rate, if they wanted to buy it out, that's what it'd be determined at the point of sale.
And we Yeah, we give that a day one. So from the first day, they know exactly what that cost is.
Okay. Now, a different tangent altogether. I'm sure part of your revenue stream would be through FCAS, so auxiliary services to the network and frequency support. We know that in years gone by, that's been very lucrative for those operating VPPs, but there's a fair argument for diminishing returns, particularly as we get more and more batteries on the grid and massive batteries and batteries behind the meter.
Yep.
Is that built into your model, and what's your forecast on that?
Yeah, my forecast is we don't earn money from FCAS because we believe it's going to diminish so quickly that there's no reason to do it. So we don't earn anything from FCAS to date. We actually prioritize the dispatch of power to the hedge profile of an energy retailer or the market itself. There are times that the demand for FCAS and the market is at the same time, but there's also times that it's not. So we've really prioritized the energy market over FCAS because I do believe that's going to be going down over the years to come as we're going to start seeing more batteries come into market.
One of the things I really used to love about pay-as-you-go solar, for want of a simple term, was that when you're not worried about whether it's $8,000 or $6,000 or whatever in terms of capital cost, when you're amortizing the cost over a longer period, the great thing was, as a designer and supplier, I could go, hang on, if I slap some better equipment in here, or a 4G modem in here, or a couple of extra meters, or a really nice control system, or whatever it may be, that adds 1 cent a kilowatt hour or half a cent a kilowatt hour. So it's kind of irrelevant. But what I can do is pump up the quality. I can really put some good gear in this system, and it's not going to change the economics of the system very much at all for the owner. Is that something that applies in your scenario as well?
100% does. Like we do not compromise quality here. Like we started from the part of going, we've got to gold plate everything. I truly believe everything is gold plated right now. There will be an opportunity in our business to optimize certain elements and improve our cost base. But as a growing business from early on, if you try to cut your costs at the beginning, you're going to fall over. Like we really gone to the extreme. We've overspent on items, and then we'll start bringing it down. So yes, in summary, we're a very heavy data business. We have so much information. We get live data every 5 minutes from each site. And now it's about, well, what do we do with this? How do we provide the right tools to the solar installer, the energy retailer, and the customer to understand the performance of those assets and make sure that everyone is winning? It's a juggle. Like those three stakeholders, the life of our business, and we're going to make sure that they're all benefiting from it.
You mentioned before, Alan, that the DNSP is sort of one of the players that could benefit a bit more. I mean, I guess two-part question. Number one, how do they feel about these installations? Like, is it, something that they're a fan of? Is the applications and all of that sort of thing pretty normal? And secondly, what could they do to be more in the winning side?
We've got an aging network. We've got more demand of electricity than ever and only increasing over time. And something needs to happen. And it's going to be spending more money and upgrading substations or transformers or so forth. So I think the ability of a DNSP being able to control assets is the future. I think SA Power Networks is showing the example about what they want to do. The challenge they have is the conflict of interest. If all those customers own that asset and bought a system for them, and then Sappen's turning around saying, we're going to turn it off at this time of day because otherwise everyone's going to have a blackout, there's that conflict. So I see
people aren't super happy about it when it happens, that's for sure.
They're not, right? But they'll be even not happy when you have a blackout and
for sure.
bigger problems, right? But I think in our world, where do we see a role of us, supporting a DNSP is really is having control and visibility. Like we've got granular information of what's happening at a very site level, and then as a group, but then also having control of that. Like during those 4 or 5 events that happen every year in every DNSP, control room needs to be able to do something, then great, they could do that. And that is the benefit of a virtual power plant. Now you need scale for that. You need tens to hundreds of thousands of homes to really make that impact. And we do see us playing a role there over the next 3 to 4 years. But also we need to make sure the asset base is big enough to do so.
Is it a very competitive space at the moment?
I think what we've seen is the cost of living crisis is real. People can't afford these assets. I think it's interesting to see what's going to happen with the battery rebates coming into play. But we have seen our partners sit in front of 2 customers and sell to 1. So we have nearly a 50% conversion rate from introducing this product and making the sale. So it has been very popular. We grew by about 800% last year, and we deployed a lot of capital, deployed a lot of assets, and now it's about how do we start scaling this? And I think the limitation in our growth is around operational scale, because installing a system to the quality standards that's required for the energy sector has to be done right. And if you try and run at this too quickly, and it can blow up. So to answer your question, there is a lot of, I guess, demand within the space.
As in, like, you need more solar research, you need more installers. Is that what you mean, Alan?
Yeah. So we're going to be very selective. So we have solar retail partners that come on board. In fact, next week we're off to the Hunter Valley with them to do a 3-day training. They go through quite an intense training course to learn how to sell it. They'll meet the energy retailers. We go through
maybe a couple of seller doors in there too, Alan.
Absolutely.
1 or 2.
And the whole purpose of this is, we need to meet a standard for the energy retailers, and it's not just for them, it's for everyone. So partners will join us, they go through that course, and then they can go out and sell it. Our aim over the next, I would say, 24 months is to have around 80 to 100 partners retailing this solution. We want to keep it quite small and exclusive for certain solar retailers. We require a certain level of quality, and if the quality isn't met, then unfortunately they just are unable to retail or maintain the solution. And that is very, I guess, legally binding with the energy retailer side, because we've got to make sure that quality is not compromised.
I'm going to come back and say it again. It's just a mind shift, right? It's like, how can we think about this entire problem in a different way with all the complications? The only difficult part here is, I don't know if you guys have ever seen those reels of dogs walking down the street when they got cameras strapped to them, but Karl Jensen has just walked through the streets of Adelaide. I think he's walked into a hotel. There was some dude at the door. We've been in his car. We've gone through, I feel like I'm in a dog video, Karl.
Doors.
And now we're sitting in a foyer somewhere.
Yes, look, thanks for talking to me, Nigel. This is the first episode where I've felt obliged to keep my mouth shut because I've missed enough that I don't know what anybody's talking about. So you're going to win the word count this week by a long way.
Hooray.
And Karl lost for words. I reckon that's monumental.
Yeah, mic drop.
How's it been in Adelaide, Karl?
I have been at the Adelaide Home Show. There's a number of battery people there. There's a number of local software businesses there. And there's a whole lot of people that want a battery just because there's a rebate. So that's great for feedback from 50 people that I spoke to today. They just want a battery.
That's like 3/4 of Adelaide, mate.
Well, game on tomorrow. Yeah, Saturday obviously is going to be a lot more people through than today, but it definitely confirms that there's a lot of people that want to buy a battery regardless of anything else.
I could have told you that, Karl.
Yeah, look, I know. It's rather scary.
It is. We were chatting about the supply and demand challenges and supply chain issues right at the beginning of the episode, Karl. So there's no doubt there's challenges out there. We're probably almost out of time, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Beats. I did want to thank Alan for coming on, though, because it's always interesting watching the evolution of solar, right? That's the most fascinating part about this industry, and seeing how you guys are trying to create, I think I called it the grinder of solar. It's probably the bad terminology, but, that kind of liaison between retailer benefit and solar owner benefit, we haven't really seen that very much. So, thanks for taking the time and telling us a little bit about what you've got on offer. That sounds like it's a really interesting deal. It is clearly very different to some of the other things that we've seen before as well, which is cool. And best of luck to you.
Thank you.
One last question, Alan. You've spoke about the offering and what NRN are up to. If there are retailers who are interested in getting more information or partnering with you, how can they do so?
Look, we'd love to. Like we every quarter we actually run these training sessions at a winery, funny enough, to go through and onboard new partners. So if you are interested, please reach out, jump online, speak to one of our team. We'll then discuss the next course that we're going to go through, and it is quite a robust training. There's, we invest in you, you invest in us in this solution, and if you really believe that this is going to help your business, we take you through the whole journey, and it's all around for a solar retailer. If you feel like you're on the race to the bottom, you're competing against against everyone else's prices. There's no negotiation. You know exactly what you're going to earn when you make the sale, which is great. And it's also opening up a huge market that you might not have been able to tap to before.
All right, before we wrap up, I'm just going to go around for last comments, and we'll start with you, Jess.
I'm going to whip through as quickly as I possibly can some updates regarding the battery rebate. We are fortunate enough to sort of get the inside scoop in the Smart Energy Council chat. So anyone who is a member, they are doing a session on Tuesday the 24th, 12 p.m. AEST. If you are a member, they'll go through where we're up to and what's next. What to assume, what not to assume is the sort of summary there. But a few things that we have seen is there's a lot floating around on cutters and things like that around how many registrations you can make per day. So it's 2 installs in a day, 2 solar systems, 2 battery systems, or 1 solar and 1 battery system, unless you have an other arrangement. This is from the CER as well. And for the month of July 1st to August 1st, the exception is that ready to commission systems is 2 solar, 2 battery, or 1 solar and 1 battery system, or 4 ready to commission battery systems. So when you're thinking about your mix and matching there, if you're trying to have you guys on a job and do a couple of other systems, you've really got to think about the logistics. And, it's something that we've been planning for weeks, and it's still a muck around. So have a beer on hand and really spend some time sorting out how it's going to work for your business. And then, my last little thing is, I know I say this pretty frequently, but I think just especially in the comment sections online, just trying to have a bit of empathy for each other and trying to lead with kindness the best we can, because everyone's under the pump and some people do not deal with stress very well. And some people have been really going through it for a long time. So just trying to get a bit of love out there.
Karl, last comments.
Yeah, well, from me, for all the people that went to visit SNEC and tell me how good it was, next time I don't want to know. So I didn't get to go. Maybe I'll go another year, but it sounds like everyone that went to SNEC had a royally good time. Next year, maybe.
Yeah, there was a massive Aussie contingent there, and we look forward to catching up with a couple of them in upcoming episodes, Karl. So that'll be really interesting. Last comments, Nigel.
Cool heads. That's my message, is cool heads. In times like this, when, there's buckets of rebates available, it is so tempting to, fight it out for every last sale. And, maybe I'm an idiot and a hopeless sales guy, but it seems stupid to me. Now seems, in fact, I big shout out to Ben Jones. He put a post up the other day actually about the fact that he was seeing, crazy quotes out there. And he said, you know what? Now's a time where everyone in the solar industry can actually make a respectable margin, not a greedy margin, but a respectable margin. There is an opportunity here, so keep a cool head.
And Alan Hunter from NRN, thanks for coming on. Do you have any last comments?
It's, I think supply demand in batteries is a very interesting discussion right now. So, solar businesses out there right now, it's an exciting time. But I think, as business owners, it's just planning, getting your forecast right, and enjoy hopefully the downside of down on the roller coaster, the enjoyment over the next few years, because it's going to be interesting to watch.
Great comments, and thanks for coming on again. And thanks to you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, and we'll catch you next time.